Welcome to my YouTube channel, Wendy Layne Art. You can visit me on Facebook at facebook.com/Wendy Layne. You can see my Etsy shop at etsy.com/shop/Wendy Layne, or visit me on the web at www.wendylayne.com. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to be demonstrating a drawing titled It's 5 o'clock. I drew this in colored pencil and I used Bristol vellum paper. I used Caran d'Ache Luminance, Faber-Castell Polychromos. I used a couple of Faber-Castell Pitt pens, a black and a white. The black was just used a little bit at the very end of the drawing. I used Prismacolor Premier black pencil and the Prismacolor colorless blender. And I also used a Jelly Roll by Sakura. It was a white gel pen that I got on Amazon. Okay, to start off with, you can see that I'm using my iPad. I have it close to me on the left side there. It's obviously sped up, so it's kind of hard to tell, but I zoom in and out as needed so that I can see all the details that I'm drawing onto the paper. I started out at the beginning of this video. I stick the Prismacolor blender up in front of the camera to kind of hold it there for a second so you know when I'm using the blender. But as I went through, I decided with being sped up, you probably would not be able to tell real clearly when I was using the blender pencil. So I'm just going to talk about what I'm doing through this whole process. I started this drawing by doing a light sketch on the white piece of Bristol vellum paper. I used a projector to enlarge the image, and then what I did was I used a very, very light pencil just to really lay out the outside edges or the line drawing of the bottle, so I would have the proportion correct. And so I would also, I made like little dots where all the corners of the labels are, and I made like little lines where you could see where the words started out on the labels so that I could get the proportion correctly. Without doing that, doing it freehand, you know, it could have been done, but you would have definitely spent a lot more time with a ruler measuring, and this way I just knew where to start. And then I just picked a place. Usually with my drawings, if it's a human or an animal, I start with the eyes. This was a little bit different. I think I just start somewhere close to the top so I can work my way down, and that way I'm not picking up pencil and smearing it across whenever I go back across the drawing. So I try to start at the top and work my way down. So I started with the cork area of this bottle, and I already had the outline on the left and the right, but the detail is really all in the center and the glass, etc. This was my first attempt to ever draw glass, so I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do it. And to be honest, the best advice I can give you is don't think about what you're drawing. Just literally look at the picture to the left and look at your paper, and you copy the exact color that you see as close as you can get, the exact shapes that you can get. I mean, exactly the way you see them. If you see a little triangle, you draw a little triangle. If you see a square, you draw a square, and you try to match the color as closely as possible. I use the blender a lot in between the colors, so as I lay down a color, I see, you know, I need to get it into the paper, so I'll use the colorless blender, and I clean it off first with a little bit of sandpaper to make sure that I'm not blending colors and with the last color still on the pencil. So, but you'll see that, you know, after I put a few layers of color down, I will pick up the colorless blender, and I'll just start to, right here, like you just saw that, I start blending the colors together to make them look right. Here I had actually touched the corners, like from my projector. I had written where the corners, or drawn where the corners needed to go. So then I just took my ruler and connected those corners that I had laid out on my white piece of paper. I knew that's where the label was going to go, and so I started to put it down with a ruler. Now, the words were very, very tedious. The letters are small. You can see that I'm not working in a really huge area, so each letter is like the tip of your finger, and the words on the Patron bottle, the tequila, the letters are very, they're kind of unique. So just trying to get very, very detailed on the letters, which I'm about to do in the drawing. That was hard. I don't know if hard is a word, but tiresome. So I think I did like 2 letters at a time and then took breaks, frequent breaks through that process. All these little areas, I mean, it's just, sometimes I would actually find myself blurring my eyes, just looking for colors popping out so that I would get the right color and the right shadow in the right area. But once again, not really thinking about it looking like glass. In fact, probably at one point about right now, I was drawing and I felt like it was just a bunch of green colors. And I think my husband walked in at the time and he was like, wow, it's starting to it looks awesome like a bottle. But I couldn't see that. I mean, I was looking at it, I couldn't see that it looked like glass because I had spent so much time just rubbing the colors together and trying to copy what I was seeing in the iPad that I really couldn't see the 3D part popping out yet. So I had to literally take a break, leave the room, do some other things, and then come back in and look at it like from a fresh perspective. And then I was able to see, it's starting to look like a bottle. So that's something to keep in mind. You know, I've almost thrown pieces away so many times because to me, I'm so deep into the drawing that I don't really see the product as looking good yet or not feeling realistic. And so I start to give up and think, this is taking too long, or it's not looking right, or it doesn't look like glass, or whatever I'm trying to draw. So it's always a good thing for me not to do that. It's nice to have people around that tell me, no, don't throw it away. But as I am blending the colors, one thing to keep in mind, I'm not just mindlessly blending. I'm not just taking this colorless wax blender and just rubbing it over all the colors so that it's, you know, smushed into the paper. I'm actually blending, I guess blending with a purpose. Whenever I see, for instance, a dark and a light color come together, I don't want to make a real sharp line. So I'll put the light color next to the black, and then I will take the colorless blender and gently guide the black over onto the light color so that it looks like it just flows like a natural shadow would flow, instead of just you know, blending just to blend, or just to push the color into the paper. So I'm actually guiding the color where I want it to go with the colorless blender, and that's something I think can be misunderstood when I've seen people try to use a colorless blender and they think they're just like shining the picture or just, you know, rubbing it into the paper, but there's more to it than that. The eraser that I used, you'll see me pick that up occasionally. It's a very important tool, and I use it not really to erase mistakes, but when I want a lighter color of the same color area. So say I'm putting like a whole section of black down and I see that, you know, the light is hitting it just so, and it needs to be a little bit less black there. So I'll sometimes take the eraser and just gently just glide it across that area, and it really just picks up just enough of the color to look at like light is shining on it. So sometimes I'll use it that way. I'm also, as I go along, a lot of people like to, you know, do the whole drawing once and then go back over it in layers. I really like to see the progress as I go. I like to see the finished piece pop out at me. So, you know, I'll take all the way through the process. I'll do as many layers as I need to. I'll, you know, blend them in and layer it again and get the shadows right. And then I'll come back over with a gel pen. I have a white Jelly Roll pen, and I will take that just for the extra bright white lights, because one thing I've noticed with color pencils is that no matter how white your white is, it's just not going to shine like you need it to in some cases. And even leaving your paper without coloring it is still not white enough. So I found that the Jelly Roll pen is really great for just dabbing a tiny bit of white to just give it that last little bright. And sometimes I'll use a white color pencil and then I'll still go right on top of it with the Jelly Roll. They seem to work fine together for me. I don't have any issues with it not sticking to the paper. So I really like using the Jelly Roll for the highlights. So this picture was very detailed, very intricate, tedious, I guess is the word. I actually took 48 sittings to actually draw this, and it was over 17 hours to go from nothing to a finished product. So a lot of that time was spent in very tiny little areas. When I would put a light or a reflection down, I had to be very, very, very careful that it was as close to the original bottle as I could get, because otherwise it just wasn't right. Since I don't really know what I'm drawing, and when I say that, I'm not thinking about what I'm drawing. I'm just copying shapes, shadows, colors. And so the picture in the iPad on the left, it appears, because of the iPad, I think it's just the way it was filmed, it looks a little less colorful. I used a little bit more green in my actual drawing. That's the way it looked on my actual screen in my Photoshop app when I pulled my picture in there. So I liked that green. So I had to kind of ignore the fact that the iPad was brightening it up, and I had to just use the colors that I wanted to use. A couple of things to keep in mind with this drawing, the way it's being filmed. My camera does not really fit right on top of my desk, so it's actually to the left of my head. So it's looking at the drawing at a little bit of an angle. So while it may look like my drawing on the right is not the same proportion or is smaller than the one on the left, it's not necessarily true. It's most likely just the camera making it appear that way. Also, one thing to keep in mind, if you are using an iPad as a reference, keep in mind that when you start to zoom in, you're going to see the picture larger when you're zoomed in than what you're drawing on your paper, and that can sometimes trick the mind. And if you're not careful, you'll start drawing, or at least I do this, I'll start drawing in the same proportions as the iPad is blown up. So if that makes sense, what I try to do is keep the iPad drawing or the iPad original to approximately the same size as the drawing that I'm doing, so that when I start looking at shapes and I say, okay, I see a triangle, it's about this big, I actually draw the triangle at the right size. If the iPad image is larger, I may accidentally draw that triangle at a larger size. So I don't want to do that. If you're wondering, I listen to music the entire time I draw. There's just no way I can sit in complete silence and draw. So I listen to all different types of music, and it makes the time pass. I use Pandora, so every hour Pandora asks me, are you still listening? So every time it asks me that, or it stops, the music stops, I know, hey, I've worked on this drawing for an hour. So it kind of helps me get a feel for how long the drawing is actually taking. So music is definitely an important part of my art studio. I don't think I could draw without it. So I'm sorry I'm not able to tell you what colors that I used for this drawing. I rarely ever even look at the colors, the names of the colors on my pencils. I literally just pick them up and will look at the drawing and say, oh, this matches, or this looks pretty close, and I'll use it. So I can't really even say what colors that I use without intentionally at the beginning of a drawing, writing them all down, which would take me quite a bit longer to do. But my suggestion is to hold the color pencil up to the drawing itself and see how close it matches when you make your decisions for the colors that you use. And this is the finished drawing, and if you have any questions, feel free to comment, follow me on Facebook, and I hope you really enjoyed watching, and I hope I was helpful.